So sourcing industry group, just for those of you who don't know, we represent about $17 trillion of US equivalent spend. That means our members who are in sourcing and procurement and outsourcing manage $17 trillion of spend. So therefore, I am now speaking on behalf of all of our members, not just personally, but these are things that we're seeing. And so one of the things we did is ask our CPOs, who do they report up to? So, let me go back. So we asked them, this is even more important. Where does third-party risk management sit in your organization? How many of you think it sits in procurement? Okay, so you should. I don't know where you point this. Do you guys have any hint? There we go. 74% of the SIG membership says that third-party risk management sits within sourcing. That's huge. Now, where do most of our CPOs report up to? Take a guess. CFO, by and large, 64%. There was a study just done by Level 1 on CFOs and risk. 59% of 500 CFOs said third-party risk management has blown up the last 2 years, and they expect it to double the amount of time that they take in the next 2 years. 59% of 500 CFOs. So if the CPO is reporting to the CFO, who has third-party risk management? CFO, which means the CPO. And so where is Bradley, who was presenting earlier? Where Smith is? Okay, I keep naming names and they're not in the room. So, all right, so how many of you know who your top suppliers are? You do your Pareto diagram, right? We all know what a Pareto diagram, we spend about 80% of our money with 20% of our providers, correct? How many of you are intimate with the other 80% of your providers? Anyone? Anyone know who's in your long tail? Do you all know what long tail spend is? Yes. Okay. How many of you know every single supplier in your long tail? How many know half of them? You know half? Good. You are the exception to the rule. So what I am going to talk about is cybersecurity risk, because I cannot emphasize this enough. You don't know what you don't know. And if you're not running a risk tool on 100% of your supply base, if you are not using technology, you are exposing your company to astronomical risk. How many of you know the story about Target? They got hacked, right? Blah, 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 blah. Who hacked them? This is how I ask a question, you're supposed to answer. An HVAC supplier. An HVAC, so heating and air conditioning, right? Heating and air conditioning. How many of you do a cybersecurity check on your HVAC suppliers? Not often. This one happened to be in a tail, okay? Target stores are all over North America. This was in a remote location, a location where they didn't have a nationwide contractor. And by the way, who they contracted with had subcontracted the work out. They had to plug into the systems to see what was going on with heating and cooling. And lo and behold, on this person's computer for over a year, there was a worm sitting, waiting to find a home. They connected in, realized there was credit card data available. It went in and stole all the data from Target. Now, how many of you could have that happen to you today? Everyone raise your hand. I hate to tell you. 47% of the world's largest banks admit that somebody has tried to hack them this past year. 37% say that there is an unidentified intruder who has made it into their system. 37% of the world's largest banks. So if it can happen there, it can happen to you. A bank spends $3,000 per employee within their entire company on cybersecurity. How many of you spend $3,000 per employee on cybersecurity? I mean, it's not to be embarrassed. They have to. You know, we had the Great Recession because of the financial industry and what happened. They have had so much fiduciary and legislative oversight, they have to spend that kind of money. But what happens if we don't do it? So all right, how many of you are digital natives? And if you raise your hand, that means you're young enough to know what it is. That means, did you grow up with an iPad in your stroller? Pretty much. Can you do this and you don't know how to turn a page in a magazine and you go like this when you see paper and it doesn't, nothing happens? Digital natives are the workforce that we have today. So how do they communicate? Text, right? Okay, so we have 4 generations in the workplace. The oldest generation, how do they communicate? Write me. They used to send letters. The next oldest generation, how do they communicate? Call me. That was pretty cool. Now you have cell phones, everyone can call each other. The next generation, email. The youngest generation, text. So we have all of these folks working together with different mindsets around technology. I actually know of a CPO, and we just hope and pray he retires any minute of any day, who still dictates his email. Dictates his email responses, and I swear to Almighty God. He has a phone, he doesn't read them. His secretary, not an EA, not an admin assistant, his secretary prints them out, then he reads them, and then he dictates his response. Okay, so these are the folks that are working. And this is a CPO of a very large publicly held company. And I will not give you the name, but when he retires, we're all going to be really happy. This is one who needs to be gone. So, but how is he communicating and worrying about his HVAC supplier that might be sitting in his tail? He's not. He doesn't even realize that there could be a risk. So how many of you know who most of your third parties are? How many of you know your fourth parties? How many of you know your fifth parties? And when Justin comes up in a little while and we start talking about slavery in your supply chain and everything else, you're going to be appalled at what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. And if we don't spend the time to look at our tail, we are fraught with cybersecurity because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know that that HVAC supplier who had a very small contract was subcontracting the work with somebody else, because we never asked if you subcontract. Yet alone did we ever ask him, how do you run virus scans and how up to date is your computer equipment? Did we? Okay, so tell me this, and I want an honest answer. If you see an iPhone charging cable left behind at the end of the meeting, plugged into the wall, everyone's gone, you can't find out who it is, there's no initials, what do you think? Woohoo! My kids steal mine all the time, I've got a new one. I mean, pretty much. How many of you would say, that's a great find, I could always use an extra one? Honestly, come on. If you say absolutely no way, then I'm going to talk to you afterwards. I think you're a liar. You will pick it up. You will pick it up and you'll use it. So there was most recently, if you read my blog, you'll know, there was a hacker convention. And just for shits and giggles, they left a whole bunch of charging cables out around the conference. The charging cables were hacked. Hackers picked them up and they were hacked. And that's a hacker. How many of you have logged into the Wi-Fi? Witty 3. How many of you are on a private VPN? How many of you ever browse at the airport on the airport Wi-Fi? Do you turn on your VPN every time? How many of you have looked up anything on the internet since you got here or checked your email without turning on your VPN? Do you know how many people we could have hacked into in this room alone? How secure is your iPhone? Very, until you download your first app. It's very secure until you get your first app. So now we have phones that we have a bunch of apps on that we don't know what information they're accessing. We could be hacked through a cable. How many of you have ever been to a conference and have been given the conference presentations on a USB drive? How many of you stuck them into your computer? So in Wall Street, not too long ago, about 6 years ago, some hackers had planted a whole bunch of flash drives around different parts of Wall Street. And what did you do back then? They were pretty expensive. Memory was expensive. You picked it up and was like, yay, I'll reformat it. I've got a new hard drive, a new flash drive. They were all hacked. How many of you, even today, how many of you have received a LinkedIn invitation today? How many of you have clicked on and accepted it through your email? Number one phishing is LinkedIn requests. How many of you have clicked on it? Or Sarah Scudder tagged me on a LinkedIn and I want to see what she said really badly. I have to go out, close out my email, go into LinkedIn and open it up. If I click on it in my email, unbeknownst to Sarah, it could have a virus in it. Number one place. So the point is that 90% of the hacks take place from an internal employee that works for you, inadvertently. So at our company, you cannot charge your phone through your computer no matter what, because your phone's not secure. You may not use a phone charging cable from someone you don't know. You may not use a USB that you pick up. You don't ever put a non-native USB that came directly from a manufacturer into your computer, or you will be fired. It's pretty straightforward. The only reason is we're not a big company. You could hack into us, but I don't want you hacking into my members. That would take down SIG. So the whole point is if 90% of our phishing can come from internal employees by accident and expose our company, and those are the people that work for us, that we trust every day, just think about what might be happening in your supply base. So that's what I really want to get across to you. It's not doom and gloom. It's just like, wow, what great opportunity. So when we talk about elevating sourcing and the stories we tell, and I like Diego, I'll always remember the big ass sledgehammer the rest of my life, and I want one. When you talk about the stories, you talk about the risk that you averted for your company by doing more due diligence, by putting in best practices for yourself and your suppliers. I mean, if I could save my company hundreds of millions of dollars of exposed risk, I'm a hero without saving any money. I saved their reputation. I might have kept them from going out of business. I may have avoided slavery in our supply chain. I may have avoided conflict in minerals, all because I spent more time and I was aware of all these risks. And so for me, I mean, I think we are in the coolest industry in the world because every day we wake up and we read the news and it's like, yes, there's a tsunami, there's a terrorist attack, there's this, there's that. And while it may not be good news on paper, it's like, how does that affect my supply chain? How does that affect sourcing somewhere in the world? How does that affect my employees or my members? So when you think about it, if you don't get excited every day to think, wow, my world is different the second I wake up, and it's going to be different every hour as news and life ticks by, you don't get how cool this industry is and how much impact we can bring to it. So can I give one last tiny story? Okay, so those of us who are not digital natives, I'm post-abacus, but when I took the CPA exam, we weren't allowed to have calculators. Okay, so that's how long ago. How many of you feel that the speed of change is happening faster and faster and faster every year? Okay, so simple question. I have a child. Tanya, you have 2 children. Okay, one child said, I'm going to do my chores every day, and every day I want a penny. And every day I do it right, I want you to double my allowance from the day before. And your other child says, I want $1 a day. Every time I do my chores, I get $1 for that day. Which child is the smarter child? So think about that, and I took this home and I gave it to my kids as a test. They flunked. They're not that bright. They're cute. They're generalists. They're going to be successful eventually. But you take a penny a day and you multiply it. And I know for most of you, you're going to have to test this. 1 penny becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. That's how technology started when we were younger. Technology doubles every year, the amount of technology. When 1 goes to 2, do you go, oh my God, it's 2 times? No. When 2 goes to 4, yeah, it's a little faster. You don't notice it. When 4 goes to 8, 8 goes to 16, 16 to 32, 64. When it starts doubling, you get to 10 times. Now I'm at $6 a day, over $6 a day from my penny at 10 times, so 10 years. At 30 years, guess what I'm at? Over $10 million. So if your child had taken that bet and just did their chores for 30 days, you'd owe him more than $10 million. Now, you're not going to believe that math until you do it yourself. And I should have put up here on a slide, because every time I have someone go like 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8. I guarantee you At 31 times, you're over $10 million. So at 30 years, the reason we feel like we're drinking out of a fire hose is because when we did the 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, it was easy. But when you do 5 million to 10 million, you are drinking from a fire hose. And now when it's 10 million and everything's going to go to 5G, and then we're going to be at 20 million, and then 40 million, then 80 million, the amount of information that we can process and is coming to us every single day is increasing. So if you don't feel like it's coming at you like a fire hose, then you're not paying attention. So just accept it. You can't make your mouth any bigger. You can't drink from anything bigger. You just have to know it's coming and start to be able to sift through it. Find the really good providers to work with who understand the technology and can help you. And with that, I'm done. So there.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Dawn.